It's okay for the church to change. Hey, this is Pastor Matt here with your Missionary Pathway Mission Insight. And this insight actually comes from an email I received from Emily, our old communications director at the church that I was a part of starting The Point. And in the email, it read, "A lot has changed." What's changed? Well, when we originally started the church, we were in a movie theater. Now they're in a historic church building location. When we originally started the church, we were in a different part of town. Now they're in the center of downtown where we did a lot of our outreach events. You know, people have come and people have gone and people have come back. It's been led by different pastors, and there've been a slew of different church interns that have come through the doors of that church. A lot has changed over the years. And yet, in the midst of all the things that have changed, a few things have remained the same. It's still a church that's dedicated to connecting disconnected people to Jesus. It's still a church that is centered on helping people fall in love with and in awe of Jesus. And it's still a church that seeks to be a blessing to the city in which it lives. And of course, it's still a place where you can come as you are and you can text in your questions. A lot's changed over the years, and some people may look at me and say, well, what do you think of all that change? I think it's a beautiful thing. Why? Because the church needs to be willing to change. Because the church's focus is not to always remain the same in every single aspect of what it means to be church, but to remain the same in the most important things and to allow everything else to be ever changing for the sake of sharing the gospel and reaching disconnected people for Christ. So, how do you know how and when you should change? Well, here are 4 quick insights. Number 1, know what shouldn't change. There are things within a church that should never change, but they're really simple. It should always be centered on Jesus and the gospel. It should always be centered on the unchanging scriptures, and you should always center on word and sacrament, making disciples, and the mission of Jesus. But when you really consider all the things that we do in church, that's a really small list of things that shouldn't change. Everything else is open to be able to change. You can change worship styles. You can change locations. You could change worship formats. You could change the things that people wear or don't wear to church. You can change the style of music. You can change whether you have music in a church at all. You could even change the time and location. Whatever you change, the important thing is that you're changing for the sake of Jesus and the gospel and to make an impact in the world around you. So, how do you know when you should change? Change for the sake of making disciples. You know, Jesus didn't call us to plant big worship services or even plant churches. Jesus called us to do one simple thing, to go and make disciples. Disciples of Jesus who would go and then also make disciples of Jesus. That's the core calling of the church. So if there are things that need to change in order to carry out that commandment of Jesus better, to go and make disciples, then those should be some of the first things that should change. You should also change for the sake of the mission of the church. And the mission of the church is to see disconnected people connected to Jesus. Because when people are connected to Jesus, they're reconnected to God. And the world is such a better place when people are connected to God. So change for the sake of making disciples and change for the sake of connecting disconnected people to Jesus. But when you change, knowing what you shouldn't change and knowing all the things you should change, take time to celebrate. Celebrate the things that are changing, the things that worked well in the past to help people connect to God and to help the disconnected get connected to Jesus, and celebrate the things that God's used before you begin to change and move on to the new things that God's doing. Because the reality of the local church is something that is unchanging in its theology, unchanging in its rootedness and centeredness on Jesus, but it's something that in its form is ever changing so that it can reach the world that is with the message that will always be the message of the gospel. If you'd like to learn more about how you can do mission, how you can change and shift to be able to meet the challenges of the culture that is, check out themissionarypathway.org. The Missionary Pathway is a pathway that's developed to teach you how to go out in the community, to listen to the community, and learn how to be the church in the 21st century. And so check that resource out, or any other resources that we have on the website. And until next time, it's always a joy hanging out with you right here on Mission Insights.